Hello everyone, Data here, and welcome to the 100% guide to everything scouting and drafting on NHL 25 franchise mode. And the good news is, if you're still playing on any franchise mode from NHL 19 to 25, this video applies to you and how you can maximize your scouting. I don't know if that's exciting or just sad, but hey. I've already put out guide videos on this topic in the past, but each year I learn a few more little tweaks, and since the system hasn't changed in so long now, I believe that we have gotten to a point where it can be fully optimized without having to wonder if we're missing anything else. So in this video, although I will be walking you through everything you need to know about scouting and drafting in franchise mode, the most important part will be showing you how to fully uncover just about every prospect in every draft class through my method of amateur scouting. And although I call it mine since I'm making the video, I want to make sure to give credit where credit is due to Red Boy, who has been a channel member for a few years now and has shared his strategy with us. So thank you to him for doing that, as he has now helped, I believe, literally thousands of us to better enjoy our franchise mode experiences. Now, as I get started, remember to feel free to use the timestamps below if you're just looking for a quick answer to a question, or go ahead and leave a comment here on YouTube or in our Discord server, link in the description, so that I or one of our other channel members can get back to you as soon as possible. And if this is your first time discovering the channel, we are all about franchise mode series, guides, and career simulations here. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, this is the place for you, and it would be that much greater of a community with you as a part of it. So subscribe not to miss out on any NHL 25 and beyond content to come. Now, without further ado, let's get started, ladies and gentlemen, on the guide. Of course, we're in franchise mode. So from the main menu here in NHL 25, you can go ahead and click on New for a franchise mode if you are starting from the very beginning. Of course, you might already be in your franchise mode. That's fine. So I'll go ahead and give myself a name here, Scouting. Why not? When choosing what team to use, it really doesn't matter which one. So I'll go ahead and use my hometown, Canadien Montréal. Pourquoi pas? Montreal Canadiens, division alignment does not matter, but the very first thing you want to look at is the settings. So when I play franchise mode, these are how my settings look, but the big ones that you might want to consider are owner mode, player morale, and fog of war. I turn owner mode off because I don't really feel like getting fired for not upgrading the bathrooms for like hundreds of thousands of dollars when winning the Stanley Cup gives me like $20,000, but that's a topic for another day. But if you do have owner mode on, keep in mind that that will now put you within the constraints of a budget. So you can't always necessarily hire the best scouts if you're going to be giving all of your budget to your coaches, for example. So keep in mind, if owner mode is on, the budget might be a bit of a hindrance. With owner mode off, the budget does not matter. Another reason, in my opinion, to keep it turned off. Player morale, another thing that's broken in my mind that I also keep turned off. If it's turned on, you'll want to also take into consideration a character assessment when you're scouting a player. I'll get into that later on, but again, I keep it off. And for fog of war, another thing that I keep turned off. But if it is turned on, then now you'll have a much greater need for using pro scouts. If fog of war is turned on, essentially pretty much all the overalls and attributes of players in the league will be unknown to you until you send pro scouts to scout that player or that team, and more will be discovered over time. I like the idea of it, but it just takes up way too much time and way too many of my scouting slots. Because you can only have 20 scouts, if I have 10 dedicated to pro scouting and 10 to amateur scouting, it will be very felt in the draft. In my experience, you'll want to have like at least 16 to 18 amateur scouts, but if I can have 20, I'd much rather have 20 to scout for those later gems in the 250s, 300 ranked, rather than have like 1 or 2 pro scouts who are trying to do way more work than the game has designed it for. So for this video, I'll also be having it turned off because it'll hinder a bit of the attributes I'm trying to show you when it comes to drafting and stuff like that. But just keep in mind, if fog of war is turned on, most attributes are set to question marks, and if it's turned off, you'll know what a player's overall is, what their attributes are, and you won't need to send pro scouts to them. And finally, for auto staff management, I also keep that turned off because I want to be in control of hiring the best scouts possible, and you just essentially don't want to let the CPU do anything. Just trust me, we'll get to that later on. Rules and settings now, the last couple things you want to look at. So quick settings, before you start your franchise mode, you'll have quick settings and advanced settings. In quick settings, not much to do here, aside from verifying that auto scouting is not happening. So if you want to have pro scouts, I'd say a max, like a real max of 4, like 1 per division, then you could say pro scouting only. But if you're not using any pro scouts and you're only using amateur scouts, make sure that the auto scouting is set to none. Then from there, go to advanced settings, and this is where there's a bit more importance to things because now you can set the draft class quality and the generated prospect quality. So for these two settings, they can go low, medium, or high, and you can change them every season if you'd like. Starting with draft class quality, as the additional information on the right says, this setting controls the frequency of a, quote, strong draft class occurring. When set to high, stronger draft classes are generated more often. Then for generated prospect quality on the right, as it says, this setting controls the quality of prospect generated in the NHL entry draft every year. When set to high, more top-end prospects are generated. So to keep it short and sweet, the way that I understand these settings is that your draft class quality will determine the depth of the class, while generated prospect quality determines how good the prospects are. So the default setting is medium, and I don't mind that at all. What I do in my own franchise mode series is that I'll use a random number generator. I'll go on Google and I'll say random number 1 to 100, and I'll set a confine for myself. I'll say 1 to 20 is low, 21 to 79 is medium, 80 to 100 is high. Spin that wheel, run the number generator, whatever it is. You get a 68. Okay, great. Draft class quality is medium. Do it again for generated prospect quality. You get a 94. Okay, cool. It'll be a medium-high class. It keeps things interesting, and I find it just adds a little bit of a twist to the draft class. Instead of always knowing and trying to, plan ahead with your draft picks, it kind of keeps you a bit more in the dark, and it introduces that random factor that I appreciate, so I like doing that. But again, if you keep it medium, that would be totally fine. Just remember that if you did do multiple seasons of low or high, it would affect the overall level of talent across the National Hockey League, especially after 5, 10, 15 years of a 25-year franchise mode. And what I mean by that is if I were to do multiple seasons of, let's say, high generated prospect quality, I might get 5 drafts in a row where the first overall pick is medium franchise or is medium elite, but like an 83, 84 overall. Meanwhile, if you do low multiple seasons, the first overall pick might be some 79 overall medium elite player. Still someone who will become a star most likely, but not the same as a medium franchise with already high overall out of the gate. So all for you to consider. Keep that in mind. And like I said, that draft class is created over the offseason itself. So once the season calendar turns over to, let's say, from 2024-25 to 2025-26 in September, that's when the new class is generated. That's why I try to remember for myself, personal reminder, every July 1st, I fix that. So now here we are at the franchise mode hub. If you're playing on a previous NHL game, this looks very different than your franchise hub home screen. But again, if you're playing from NHL 20 onward, it doesn't change anything to do with the scouting. You still go to Assign Scout, just now it's going to be under your quick links. From Assign Scout, what you want to do right away, whether you're starting at the beginning of a franchise mode or you're just starting to implement this method and you're already in year 5 of your franchise mode, whatever it might be, the first thing you want to do is evaluate your current staff and see what regions are they already in and which regions do you need to fill out. So then, of course, the question must be asked, how many scouts should I have in each region? The way that I like to distribute my scouts, it's not a one-size-fit-all type of thing, but I find based on the number of prospects in each region would be the following. I have 3 scouts for the OHL, 2 for the QMJHL, WHL, USA Central, Russia, SHL, and Liga, and 1 for Extraliga, NLA, DEL, USA West, and USA East, bringing me to a total of 20 amateur scouts. Now, if you find that for whatever reason there are more prospects in the WHL than the OHL one season, you could swap it around, 3 in the W and 2 in the O. Or if for whatever reason there aren't as many prospects in the USA Central one year, let's say, and you're able to scout up until rank 250 or whatever with just 1 scout, you can take that extra scout that you had originally allocated for USA Central and now send them wherever the need for that year is. So it's not a one-size-fit-all for every single season of franchise mode, but more often than not, that's my breakdown of the scouts. So if I'm now looking at this staff that I've been given to start my franchise mode, I would see, okay, I need 2 in Russia. So I'm missing 1 in Russia, I'm missing 1 in Liga, I'm missing 1 in the SHL. I don't need to have any scouts in ice, I'll explain that later on. I already have USA East, USA West, good. I'm missing 1 for the Q, 1 for the O, 1 for the W, and then I have a bunch of these pro scouts who are in the NHL and the AHL. Now, if for whatever reason, and now if I'm sorting by overall, you have a highly rated scout who let's say is in the AHL North, but they're A-rated, you can just go ahead and relocate that scout. Just because they're listed as a pro scout or they're scouting a pro league doesn't mean that you cannot send them to an amateur league. So for example, I have this guy in the AHL North, he's D-rated, but he's A-rated for the AHL North. But you can see that he also has, in his region familiarity, an A rating for the USA West. So if in theory this was an A-rated scout, I would send him to the USA West and then take my C-rated USA West scout and send him somewhere else, maybe the USA Central where he has an A+ region familiarity. So I'll have to say, don't fire a scout just because they're in the wrong region or they're a pro scout. If you want to go all amateur scouts, you can still use them. And even if they don't have good region familiarity, let's say now I'm going to the higher scout screen just to show you an example. But let's just say for a moment that this scout here, Henderson, was an A overall scout. A overall, but only NHL and AHLs were A+ regions, and every other CHL, Nordic, USA, Europe, or Russia category was all D, D-, whatever else. I would rather have Henderson as an A-rated scout go to a D- region, and his familiarity with that region will grow over time, rather than send a C-rated scout to a region where they're A+. So let me just clarify that one more time. If I have a scout, so now I can look in my staff, for example, I have a B- scout who, let's say, is A-rated in the QMJHL. I would rather have this B- scout with an A region score rather than, let's say, this D-rated scout who has an A+ QMJHL score, or region familiarity, I should say. So the region familiarity can adapt to the scout. Or after a year of scouting in that region, their region familiarity will grow. Overall also grows, but at a much slower pace. So all that to say, the overall of the scout is what is most important. And having said that, since there's all these D or worse rated scouts, I'm gonna go ahead and fire all of those because there are so many that are C rated here in the staff free agency pool. I'm gonna go ahead and fire every scout that's D or D-, regardless of their region score, and then now reassess. Okay, with the scouts that I have available, what am I missing? I need another Q, another SHL, another OHL, blah, blah, blah. I go out to the higher staff screen as I press with the options button, or if I'm at the main screen in franchise mode, if I back out all the way, I can go down to this new tab if you're on NHL 25, the Manage Contracts tab, and go to higher staff. That'll give you the option of coaches or scouts. So if you hold L2 on PlayStation 5, for example, from higher coaches, go to higher scouts, it's the exact same screen. So what I will do now is fill all those spots. Thankfully at the bottom, Scouts Active, that little tableau at the bottom will tell you what you have and what you're missing. Not all exactly, because I have 2 USA, but I forget, maybe the USA Central, East, West, I don't know what. But they'll tell you at least, okay, I know for sure I need OHL, I need QMJHL, I need 2 WHL. And when you have all that in mind, of course, you'll hire according to your needs, but don't just hire a scout for that region because it says that that scout is, quote, from that region. For example, I have 1 OHL scout, okay, I need to sign 1 more OHL scout. In theory, I'd say, there's only these 2 C-rated guys from the OHL. Let me check them out. Oh, well, this guy's actually B- ranked in the OHL, and this guy's A in the OHL for region familiarity. Might there be another scout who's from another region, but is A-rated, A+ rated in OHL region familiarity? So I start scrolling through from looking at all scouts instead. Might be a little bit of a trek to go through them all. But I finally find one. Stéphane Fisset, bienvenue. There you go. Even though this was a, quote, QMJHL scout, Fisset has an A+ OHL region familiarity. So I will send an offer to Stéphane Fisset to be an OHL scout, but if that offer is accepted, the game will automatically send this scout to the QMJHL because that is what the region associated with the scout is. I would have to then go and manually relocate the scout to the OHL. That's what we're going to do next in the timestamps here. That's my next little section of the video. What I just want to quickly cover before I move on would be the actual hiring of the scouts. Remember, if your owner mode is turned off, that budget in the bottom right corner and this little message here of budget remaining, that is meaningless to you. You don't need to worry about it at all if owner mode is turned off. And if owner mode is turned off, you should always, 100% of the time, be offering a scout the max salary possible. Don't touch the years, but always offer max salary possible. And by doing that, the scout will always accept your offer. I've never seen a scout not accept an offer that I've sent at max salary while also giving the same number of years that the scout wanted. Especially on July 1st, when you might have a dozen other teams trying to hire that scout, by giving them the max salary and the years that they want, you will always get them. And that's how within a few years, you'll build an incredible scouting staff for yourself. So now following my own method and going to hire scouts according to the regions, not necessarily according to their region, but what my region needs are, I'll go ahead and fill up a 20 scout staff, and then we'll get into that relocation right now. All right, 13 contracts offered. I had 7 scouts, so 7 plus 13 gets me to 20. There you go. I can advance a few days now and wait for everybody to sign on as I go through all the other things of franchise mode. And now here is everybody signing on, willing to accept. So happy, very happy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And after 3 days, I have all my answers. Scouts always take 2 or 3 days to get back to, but never more than that. And then now I can start sorting the scouts according to their region. Because obviously right away, 3 Russia, 2 Liga, 1 SHL, 2 NLA. This is not what I want to have as my staff. So I got to start relocating the staff members according to what their strengths are. So right away, okay, Dorset, you have AHL Pacific as your region. What was your region again? Maybe I forgot, maybe I wrote it down, but oh, right away it stands out to me, A+ OHL. So guaranteed Dorset is actually an OHL scout. So press triangle for change region. I can go ahead and relocate to the OHL. It'll tell you also 10 scouts active in North America. I have 0 in the NHL, good, 0 in the AHL, good, and 6 already in the CHL. So in total, 3, 2, and 2. I want to have 7 in the end in the CHL between the OHL, WHL, and QMJHL. And then I'll tell you even further, 2 scouts in region, 1 scout in region, below travel time and region accuracy and all that. I don't know why travel time is still there. It hasn't been a thing since like NHL 18 that the travel time actually means anything. Wasn't there like a budget associated with it? It's a joke. So don't worry about travel time. Send it to the OHL. Hey, I got a trophy for it, even better. Why not? And then now you want to make sure that scouts traveling are not scouting players just yet. We'll get into this in a minute, but you don't want to have a scout start scouting until they've reached their destination. Whether it's 2 hours or 8 hours, whatever the plane itinerary says, you got to advance 1 more day. So once you hire all your staff members, 1 day is for relocating, and then the day after you can begin actually scouting, but I haven't gotten there yet. So that's 2 OHL now. I gotta start thinking, okay, where now is my other OHL scout? Oh yeah, it was Fisset, and Fisset A- in the QMJHL, that stands out because I always want to have A or A+. So yeah, Stéphane Fisset will send you to the OHL. Perfect. 3 hours to travel. And now I have my 3 OHL scouts. A+, A+, A-. We'll get back to that. First, let's continue relocating. Who are my 2 WHLs? They're done. So obviously 3 USA West, that's not going to work. One of them, okay, there you go. A+ Central, A for the East. So this is not going to be one of my USA West scouts. Absolutely not. So let me just go through and do all that relocating quickly now. Okay, so 8 scouts relocated, but what you'll definitely notice, especially if you're trying to overhaul the staff, not just do a few changes, you'll get a few mistakes. Oh, this guy was A-. I forgot that I wanted A+ because there was already someone in my staff who could have been transferred to A+. It'll happen. Sort by region familiarity and check. Ah, okay, who are not my A+s? I have an A- in the East, A- in the OHL, I have an A in the QMJHL. But this scout here has a B- overall, so I will actually keep this scout and have the region efficiency grow from A to A+ over the course of a season. Meanwhile, I will fire the A-C and the A-C because I'd rather hire an A+C. Same overall, but why not have a higher region efficiency? So A- for the OHL and USA East, I'll go hire new ones for there. And then, oh, I actually find that I have too many SHL staff members. I forgot that this SHL guy, I actually want to keep him here because he's B- rated, so whatever it might be, no problem. Go ahead and fire the guy you just signed. It doesn't matter at all. There's no morale, staff morale for scouts or anything. Don't worry about it. I still need 3 more scouts now. So Liga, OHL, USA East. And actually, the first A+ scout that I can find for the OHL is C- in overall. So again, I'd rather have a C scout with an A region rather than a C- scout with an A+ region. So now I'll start looking from here and going up and see which OHL scout can I find who just has an A, and there it is right here, Braden Blackburn. AHL scout, but I will send him to the OHL. All 3 sign on, go to assign scout, beautiful. Now my last 3 can be reassigned. So yes, it's definitely a process, but now you have all of your scouting set for years to come. As each year passes by, you'll fire a few, hire a few new ones, but you'll never do an overhaul like that, really, unless there's a crazy staff free agency on July 1st 1 year. You'll never do that again. So now you can double check, okay, 2 dubs, 3 O's, 2 Q's, USA West, 2 USA Centrals, USA East, DEL, NLA, Extra Liga, SHL with a couple, Liga with a couple, Rush with a couple, there you go. Now, why aren't we scouting Ice or the Allsvenskan? Why aren't we scouting those leagues? Well, let me show you. If we go down here to View Draft Class in the Trade and Improve tab in NHL 25, and if we sort by region, and we'll go ahead and scroll down to one of those leagues, in Ice, once in a while you will get that random player. Like this draft class is a perfect example of it. David Evans, 17-year-old goalie from Hungary who's ranked 49th. Once a year, once every couple of years, you will get a player ranked in the top 100 from Ice. But aside from that, every other player is gonna go undrafted. From 460 below, all these guys are not being drafted. There's no reason in scouting a player ranked 1,299th. So if you were to have a scout that's free at the end in like June, as we'll get to later in this video, and you wanted to go scout that one player, David Evans, I would say go ahead. But to dedicate a scout to that region for 1 or 2 players, when that same scout could be scouting 15, 20 plus players in another region is not worth your time. And then when it comes to the Allsvenskan down here, you'll have some players in year 1 and year 2, Victor Eklund, real players, but after the real players are gone, after year 3 at most, you will not have players in this league any longer. Now, maybe that's something that's changed. I haven't gone 4 or 5 years into a franchise mode NHL 25 yet, but even if they were to still make some players, I would say it's likely going to be just like Ice, where maybe once a year or once every couple years there's a player worth scouting. But in terms of the region being worth scouting, Allsvenskan and Ice, they don't meet that criteria for me. Now, in the first few years, I'm talking about real years, generated years. What am I talking about? In the first few years of franchise mode, the players who are draft eligible from regions that EA has the rights to will not usually be anything too special. Like, of course, the top guys, Roger McQueen, Jordan Gavin, these top guys are, of course, the top guys, and that's why they're ranked 5th and 6th, respectively. But if I were to scroll deep into the OHL, say at 337, there's Braden Zuby. No offense to Braden Zuby, but there's no way that EA, for whatever random reason, is ranking this prospect, who isn't on anyone's radar for the 2025 draft. There's no way that they're giving him magical medium elite potential or low elite potential, and he's a gem for you to find in rank 337. There's no way. So if they're a real player, so if they have a picture especially, if they're a real player, give them a quick Google search or something, or if they're 19 in the first year, if they're generated, they'll be 17. So if they're 18 or 19 in year 1, and especially if they have a picture, they're not going to have anything too crazy for their actual potentials. Meanwhile, players from USA West, USA Central, USA East, Russia, players that are all entirely generated, the entire region is generated, not a few sprinkled in, the entire region is generated. Here's where you might find some of those gems. So if I had to draft that guy Zubi at 337, or this guy Brendan Bouma at 358, I would rather take the shot on Bouma because the generated player might have that low elite or low top 6, wherever it might be, potential, as opposed to the real world player who has a real world potential associated to that real world person. I hope that's making sense for you. So USA West, USA Central, USA East, and Russia, there are never any real players, never ever ever any real players from those leagues. You might get real players from the SHL and Liga once in a while, especially in the first few years, there might be real players. Honestly, I'm not seeing any yet, but I'm sure once EA puts out their first roster update, there will be some. So it could be that there are real players from the SHL and Liga mixed in with the generated players, but especially once you get to year 2, 3, they'll be more populated by generated players. And what I'm trying to get through here, my main point is generated players are much more interesting than real world players outside of, let's say, the top 5, 10, 15, or especially outside of the first round. So that's more something to keep in mind when you're drafting, but also goes into your time when you're scouting, because if you have only limited resources, limited time to scout, you'll want to send the scouts after the players you're more interested in, not those guys who are ranked 300th plus in the OHL, QMJHL, etc. So the scouts now sent to their proper regions and having a better understanding of who's a real prospect, who's generated, why am I scouting who and why. Let's get to the actual scouting. As you can see, 2 scouts are still traveling. So as I said earlier, you never want to scout with a scout who is traveling. If, for example, let's say I have a C-rated scout in an A-plus region, USA Central, I went ahead and did this, I want to scout the playing styles of just 5 players. That brings me to September 26th, the estimated date below current assignment, September 26th. If I take the exact same kind of scout, C overall, A-plus region, you would think it also takes me to September 26th, but no, 1, 2, so slow, 3, 4, and 5, it takes me to September 29th. I don't want to do that. So always make sure that the scout that's traveling has settled by advancing 1 more day. I know we're kind of wasting time, but allowing that scout to be actually in the region will get more done over a shorter period of time. So I can go back to assigned scout, I advance 1 more day, 0 scouts are traveling, now I can actually do this. So sorting by region, let's go ahead and get this started. Let's say whatever, we're starting with the WHL. I'm going to go to scout specific players, and the very first thing I want to do is scout the player style of a player. This can be considered as round 1 of your scouting. At the end of the video, I'll give a big summary of everything, so you can go ahead and use those timestamps if you want. But round 1 of your scouting is going to be player style. Now, in theory, when the preseason begins and it's like September 14th or whatever that date might be, you want to do this until October 1st. Because I'm in year 1, starting a franchise mode, and because I use time to hire new staff, as you can see in the top right corner, it's September 21st. So I don't want to only scout until October 1st, because that's the usual date I would go to. I'm going to push it a little bit more for this video. So October 1st would be when you want to stop, but really let's push it a little bit more for this video if you're starting in year 1, because I want to show you how strong this method is and how much of the draft class you can have uncovered. I'll go a little bit further. Let's say, I don't know, let's go to October 10th, let's call it that. But right away, if I needed to cut players, I'd already be cutting these 19-year-olds from the OHL, from the WHL. If they have a picture and they're 19 and they're ranked in the 150 pluses, guaranteed they have, like, maybe if I'm lucky, AHL top 2D or maybe low top 6D potential. So I'm not worried about these guys. But again, just to show you how things should be, let's say we're doing that. So we'll call round 1 until October 10th, just if you're starting in year 1. But remember, any other year, you want to be going only until October 1st. So let's do the same thing with my other WHL scout, and you're gonna say, okay, well, where did I last leave off? I already forget. No problem. Just go ahead and press R3, look at the player info, and on the left, you'll see under his little face, you'll see currently being scouted by another scout. Currently being scouted, currently being scouted, currently being scouted. Not being scouted. Dax Williams. Love that for Jedzia Dax. So I go ahead and press player style. I do the same thing, scouting all the way down, keeping an eye on the estimated date in the bottom right corner. I want to go until October 10th. Or you might say, okay, I don't need to go as long. I already got into the top 300. I don't want to scout any further. That's okay too. It's up to you. I'll just go till October 10th for continuity's sake, but you could stop before that. So this scout got 17 prospects scouted, while this scout is scouting, how many was it again for Claremont? It was 17, the same. Okay, so perfect. It's the exact same as it should be. They're both C-rated. They both have A+ regions. They're both doing 17 prospects each. Lovely. Now I move on to the OHL. I'll do the exact same thing. And there you go. Now, you may have noticed that I went Dorset, Fisset, and then Blackburn. I'd rather have my top prospects scouted by my better scouts. So I went A+ region, then A region. And if you're doing that, which is what I would recommend, just make sure you keep track that you're always going Dorset, Fisset, Blackburn. Dorset, Fisset, Blackburn. Because if for whatever reason you start scouting next round, round 2, as Dorset, Blackburn, Fisset, well, now the players ranked from whatever, 100 to 200, which were previously being scouted by Fisset, are now being scouted by Blackburn. Part of this strategy recommends that players are scouted by the same scout as much as possible. If you were to do round 2 with Blackburn by accident, but then go back to round 3 with Fisset, I don't think it would be a huge deal, but it might now result in that prospect at the draft being 3 bars uncovered instead of 4 bars uncovered. It probably won't be 1 bar or anything, but as much as possible, keep the same prospects scouted by the same scouts. Now, the rankings of the prospects will change over the course of the season. Central scouting rankings will change. This player ranked 98th right on the fringe is now ranked 111th. Now he's moved down to the other scout. That's why I wouldn't worry about it too much, because the bulk of your players will always be scouted by the same scout. But just keep that in mind if you're wondering at the end of this, why are some prospects not fully scouted? It's likely because a scout changed somewhere in the process. It's not a huge deal, but just keep it in mind. So I did the OHL and WHL. It's a process, and now it's time to do the rest of the entire league, from the Q, dub, everything, with the same exact method. Go ahead and watch this as it's all sped up for you. And now that's all done. All 20 of my scouts are currently scouting and doing playing style until October 10th, as you can see on the right. And if I wanted to sort by currently scouting, just double check, is everybody scouting? Yes. Perfect. You might also be wondering, I always clicked on scout-specific players. What about find prospects? What does that do? The answer is, in my experience, to my knowledge, absolutely nothing. Some people have suggested, well, what if, there's no players in the rest of the world? What if you go scout in the rest of the world and say find prospects for 2 months and maybe some will pop? No. In my experience, that never happens. For you, maybe that happened luckily once or twice, that's cool. But I'm not going to waste a whole year of a scout to maybe find a new prospect the next year in South Korea. That would be cool, but it's so rare. I have no idea why Find Prospect is still here. It's from like the NHL 18-19 days, and for some reason it's still here and it does nothing. So just totally disregard it, and remember to always go scout specific players. So round 1 is now complete. I'm going until October 10th because I started late, but remember, you should be going until October 1st. That is round 1. So let's simulate ahead to the end of round 1, October 10th. All right, we've arrived at October 10th. Beautiful. Round 1 is complete. And I go back to my Assign Scout screen at Quick Links. Lovely. Next up, as you can double check here, is anybody still scouting? No, everyone is done. Great. Sort by region again. Make sure I'm going in the same order as before. And I'll want to scout the very next thing right beside playing style, which is strengths and weaknesses. Now, if you stopped on October 1st, as you should have, you'll want to do strengths and weaknesses up until about November 10th. So remember, in the WHL, I scouted 17 players. So if I scout those same 17 players, it should take me about 5 weeks from where I am. So if I was previously saying October 1st to November 10th, then all right, now October 10th takes me to November 23rd. That makes sense because I started scouting on September 21st instead of whatever, September 8th like I should have. So I'm 13 days post my schedule right now. So again, the guidelines are for when you're starting at the very beginning. But if you're late, if you forgot, whatever it is, just try and keep a date, a set date in mind. So for round 2, you're thinking about 5 weeks after the current date, October 10th until November 23rd. It's a month and 13 days later instead of a month and 10 days later. I guess I should probably say more like 6 weeks time, but as long as you're keeping that same idea always constant. So now I'll also scout the next 17 prospects from the WHL. Strengths and weaknesses on the next 17 players bring me to November 23rd. That's great. Now, if you want to just triple check that this is where you stopped last time, scrolling one more player should be all question marks, and there it is. It's all question marks because I know absolutely nothing about this player, and that's okay. They haven't been scouted at all. I'd rather do this than the auto scouting that doesn't tell me anything about the 5th overall pick, but tells me everything about the 487th pick. So I know nothing about 318. That's as it should be. 17 with one scout, 17 with the next scout, both to November 23rd. Lovely. I'll do the exact same thing with my next scouts now. Remember, same thing, Dorset, Fiset, Blackburn, same order for the OHL. So I'll run through all that for round 2 of my scouting, which is strengths and weaknesses for the next 5 or 6 weeks. If you're doing it from the very beginning of the season, that should take you until about November 10th, but here you're seeing, okay, November 22nd. It might not be always exactly November 23rd. Different scouts, different whatever. This is 13, yeah? OHL is 13, 13, 13. November 22nd for my OHL scouts. I'll keep that in mind. But if you're doing it from the very beginning, it's around the November 10th range. And here's one of those examples where player rankings change and now I have something a bit off. If I want to scout this last player in my USA Central who I scouted last time, it would require me to go to November 25th. I could do that if it was worth my time, but for a guy ranked 617th, not worth my time. I'd rather cut him from my list and keep it at November 23rd. All these guys are likely going undrafted anyways. I'm only doing this because I have the time to do it, and because I know that because it's a generated location, USA Central, there's a higher likelihood of maybe catching one of those gems. And there you go. All my scouts are ready for round 2. They're all going until November 23rd or 24th at most. Some a little bit before, but at most November 24th. So I'll sim ahead to November 24th. And one thing I just want to highlight for you right here, as I was in the middle of my scouting, let's say from Liga, an area which is mostly generated players, when I scrolled down with my second scout and I saw at the very end of my scouting, I had to decide between scouting, let's say, this 19-year-old at 234, this guy who has a real picture, so I know that he's not going to be anything too crazy in terms of his potential, or I could scout a 17-year-old at 250. It's not too late to say, you know what, I didn't do player style, but even it's round 2 of 5, I think I'm going to go strengths and weaknesses for this player and kind of cut this guy out of my report from here on out. I'm not going to scout him any longer. So that's something you can always keep in mind. It's your decision. You can do the same thing with these 17-year-olds. 17-year-olds who are in the 250s from the Nordic countries are usually, or not usually, but they can sometimes be a very good catch for you. I've had a lot of good players come from that region at that age in that range of central scouting ranks, so keep that in mind. And that is round 2, so I can go ahead and simulate up until November 24th, which is when we'll begin round 3. Okay, November 24th. Remember, you want to actually keep it closer to November 10th if it's anything other than year one of your franchise mode. Now we're ready for round 3 of this scouting strategy. So once again, I double check, is everybody done scouting? Yes, they are. Great. I go back to sorting by region, and I'm ready to get started on round 3, which will be their skills assessment. Now, if you're following the timeline that you should be, where it's October 1st, then November 10th, this one will bring you until about January 22nd or so. Because I'm late, it doesn't matter. I just got to remember, okay, my WHL scouts are scouting 17 players, and that'll set the bar or whatever it might be. It'll give me the date to keep in mind. So let me scout 17 players. What date does that get me to? It brings me to February 7th. No problem. So now for this method in year 1, I'm thinking more about February 7th. But any other year 2 to 25, I'm thinking January 22nd or so, which means 21st, 23rd, around that range. All right, so February 7th is my range now. Let's do round 3 of the scouting. All right, so that's round 3 done. All the scouts are sent out for reports that will end between the 6th and the 9th of February, I believe. So February 9th will be the date that we go to next. Quick tip, if you, for whatever reason, you forgot how many players you had scouted in WHL to get that date I had spoken about, always scouting 17 to get that date, you can go to a region where you've only had 1 scout, and you can see where does it go until there are question marks. So if I go to the USA West and say, when do the question marks begin? It's when the date is February 7th. So I would know, it may not be exactly the 8th, the 9th, but it'll be that range, February 7th, that range of date. And then I would go back to WHL, and I would scout until I hit that February 7th range. That's one way. If you forgot how many players you had scouted in a region where there are 2 scouts, go to a region where there's 1 scout, do everybody until there's question marks, and then see what date does that bring me to. So that's round 3, skills assessment. We can simulate up to February 9th, and we can get into round 4. Okay, round 3 complete, and now we get to the most important round, round 4. In this round, you will be scouting for potential and comparison. Now, you might be thinking, well, potential and comparison is the only thing that I really care about, so why haven't I just been scouting for potential and comparison every single round? Let me do 5 rounds of potential and comparison. That was once my method. Back in the good old days of NHL 20, 21, 22, that was once my method. But this method from NHL 23 onward that I've been using shows you how to fully uncover the prospect. Not the majority are 3 bars out of 4 and you don't know their play style. No, you know their play style. You know their strengths and weaknesses. You know their potential and comparison. This is the way, trust me. So now I move into round 4, scout specific players. Once again, I'm doing potential and comparison. If I'm following the timeline that I should be following, this should take me until about late May, early June, somewhere in there. So if I go ahead and scout all the way down here, my 17 players in the WHL, that brings me to July 2nd. So obviously, I can't be doing that because the draft is going to be over by July 2nd. So let's say I'm just going to have to cut 1 player, sadly, and it'll bring me to June 23rd. That's when the draft actually is. I want to actually highlight round 5 of scouting, though. So I'll just cut 2 players. I'll bring it to June 15th because I just want to illustrate round 5 of scouting. So I'm sorry that I got to cut 2 players. It might skew the results just a tad for these players who are ranked in the 200s, but you'll still get the point of what I'm trying to say. So I'll go until June 15th for this round. In a perfect world, it's taking you to late May, early June, and it's allowing you about 3 weeks for round 5. I'm going to give myself just 1 week for round 5 so that I can show you the importance of it. But really, round 4 is the most important round. So I'll do potential and comparison until June 15th or so for all my scouts. You might also be asking now, if I'm scrunched for time, why am I spending like a month of this USA Central Scout doing all these guys in the 500s who I may very well not even draft? How about I go till the end of April and then I move this scout to another region where he's more needed? Yeah, sure, you could absolutely do that. Remember, the important part of this video is the 5-step process to fully uncover a prospect. If you want to move scouts around and mix and match dates and whatever else, absolutely be my guest. All right, and now my scouts are set until June 15th. They're all doing it, and they're in that range, doing the 4th round, which is potential and comparison. You might be asking, why did we skip over character assessment? We went straight from skills assessment to potential and comparison. What happened to character assessment? With morale turned off, we don't care about that. Even if you had morale turned on, it's not a huge deal unless you're really looking for, I'm trying to go, where am I going? June 25th? Sorry, June 15th. That's what I'm going for. Unless you're really saying, okay, my locker room needs a leader. I gotta scout someone who's a leader, not gonna be issues or whatever else. You can take some time to do that in round 5, and I'll explain that in just a moment once we get to June 15th. All right, June 15th, round 4 complete. Buffalo Sabres won the Stanley Cup. EA Sports, it's in the game. Now what you want to do, before you go back to the assigned scout screen, once you're done round 4, you want to go and view the draft class. So go down to Trade and Improve and click View Draft Class to be able to see where you are now at. Okay, look at that, medium franchise player. This was a medium draft class. So those medium franchises can still come up even if it's not a high-rated draft class that you set in your settings before the season starts. So medium franchise, medium elite, all the way down here. Everyone's fully uncovered within the first round. What you want to see is where's the first player that is not fully uncovered. So I see, okay, all the way here, is it that player from Ice? There it is. There's a player from Ice. I never scouted him. It makes sense that he is not uncovered at all. Perfect. I keep on scrolling, blah, blah, blah. Okay, who's this next guy who's not scouted at all? From Allsvenskan, no problem. That's who I budgeted for. I planned on that. But aside from that, okay, the first player who's been scouted but isn't actually uncovered, this guy from Liga. My scout said he's a bust, and he also has 1-bar AHL top 6 potential. I would like to learn more about him. Even if I'm not going to draft him, I want to know more about him. And I see he's in that 85 range, which is likely where Scout 1 goes to Scout 2. Over the course of the season, things must have changed. He must have been scouted by one scout, then the other scout, that he fell through the cracks. It's understandable. So I keep him in mind from Liga. Okay, I got to go back to my Liga scout. I keep on going. Hold on, here's another guy. This guy was, sorry again, okay, my Liga scout again. So my Liga scout will get 2 of those guys. I keep on scrolling. Okay, I see guys here, SHL, OHL. Now we're getting into the 120s and everything. As you just saw, the first 100+ players who were scouted, only 2 weren't fully uncovered. And the ones that weren't fully uncovered were because of falling through the cracks of changing scouts and the rankings changed throughout the season. If I sort by potential, I'm going to see already instantly medium elite gem, well, not listed as a gem, I'm talking a gem as in good potential late in the draft. Medium elite at 117, bang. Medium elite at 84, bang. And medium elite at 36 even right there, bang. Low elite at 142, bang. Great value already in the year 1 draft, which is notorious for not being strong. Medium top 6s into the 30s, great. Low top 6 at 50s, into the 70s, lots of low, even into 80s as well, low top 6s. Great value. So in my round 5 of scouting, this is the time where, again, if you have budgeted the time correctly, you should be in late May or early June. This is the time where you go back to your assigned scout screen and you saw, okay, so I missed a couple guys in Liga. Let's go back to my Liga scout and I'll do that. Or if you have morale turned on, this could be a time where you might say, okay, I know I have the first overall pick, so I really just want to guarantee that between the first and second overall guy, let me just check their character assessment fast, so I make sure that they're leaders, they're not going to be troublemakers, or whatever that issue might be. So that might be something I want to do if I have morale turned on. But if I don't have morale turned on, I know that the guy 85 or whatever, or 86, who was it? It was this guy. I want to know more about him, so I'll go ahead and potential and comparison him. Now, this brings me to June 24th. The draft is on June 23rd, so this is why it's no good to push it too late. You should really finish round 4 by late May or early June. If I really had finished my actual scouting by June 15th, that would be okay, but the last little tweak of refinement I would want to do, for at least for my Liga scout, it would be too late, June 24th. So keep all that in mind. For my round 5, I likely won't do anything right now. Maybe there was one guy in the OHL we had seen. I can even scroll like this, and there you go. Gabriel Frasca. Okay, can I do a potential comparison on you? No, June 25th. It's too late. But just in theory, remember that round 5 is that little bit of refinement of who fell through the cracks, / maybe I want to do something of character assessment. But really, by the end of round 4, 99% of your scouting should be done. And if there is a little thing that you want to check on that you weren't able to look at because time ran out, what you can do is start simming towards the draft, and the game will prompt you with the draft interviews. Coach retirement, blah, 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 and now here, draft interviews. Draft interviews, if you do this method of scouting, is basically meaningless. But for the players who did slip through the cracks, or for the ones who didn't scout at all, like let's say the player from Ice, I want to just learn a little bit about him. I won't learn almost anything, but it will be a little something. I'll go ahead and select him. You can have up to 3 interviews that consist of up to 3 questions in the draft interview phase here. So thanks so much for meeting me, blah, blah, blah. What I want to know first and foremost is going to go into, it's going to be in play style. And it's going to go for readiness. Because if this guy has an NHL ETA of NHL ready, right away I know his overall is somewhere in the high 70s or something like that. But he tells me, I have a lot of learning and growing to do. I'm not ready to be in the NHL anytime soon. Okay, he's a normal, like, 50 overall prospect. Okay, that's the first part I want to know. Next up, what's your play style? Okay, very hybrid, great. Back to new topic again, and I would probably ask him his strengths for strengths and weaknesses. Just want to know what your strengths are, because if it was a sniper or something who now tells me, oh, I have A+ shooting, I'd say, woo, this guy might have 4-star, 5-star shooting out of the draft. So you can learn a few things from the draft interview. It won't uncover that much, but now I know that he's 1-bar medium elite, he's a guaranteed hybrid, and he's guaranteed 5 years away. And similar, if he has a similar style, he'll have one, and it's Kari Lehtinen. It tells me a little bit about his reflexes, puck control, athletic, not very much, but it's better than nothing, and it might be that little extra boost that I need. Let's say if the player was 3 out of 4 bars scouted, to let me know more about him. If he was not scouted at all, then it really doesn't tell me much, but the biggest thing I would want to know is the NHL ETA. If that was NHL ready, I'd say, ooh, now I was not interested at all, now I might be interested. But if he's 5 years away, 1-bar medium elite, it's not enough for me to draft him, but at least I know more about him. Then you could do 2 more interviews, same thing, probably play style, NHL readiness, and strengths. That's usually what I go for, and you could do that all the way after the draft interviews. That would then bring you to the actual NHL entry draft. So before we move into drafting and draft tips, anything like that, I just want to highlight how important it is to actually do this scouting. This draft class that we have right here with so much uncovered and so many later medium top 6s, etc. uncovered is because of the hard work that we put in. You might be thinking, I don't want to do all that clicking, it's too monotonous, blah, blah, blah. And I'm with you. I don't disagree. It's a lot of work. I do appreciate that putting a lot of work gets a lot of results as opposed to putting a lot of work and it's still broken. But if you were to set everything to auto and say, you know what, auto's good enough for me, I'm just going to do it and let the computer take care of it, that's okay. But just make sure you know that you won't have close to as much uncovered. And to highlight that, let's look at this exact same draft class, but after a full season of auto scouting. And here it is. So initially, everything looks the same. It's an ordinary Krabby Patty. Oh my goodness! So here it is right away. Porter Martone. I had 3 OHL scouts. This guy is a top 10 prospect. I don't know anything about him. 1-bar, medium bottom 6. 1-bar, he might be a grinder. Tells me nothing. Right away, after the top 8, there are now question marks. Whereas when I did things manually, 2 of the top 120 were not fully scouted. So right away, this guy fully unknown. 2 Liga scouts. Thomas Whiting, totally unknown. What could he be? No one knows. So tons of 1-bar, 2-bar, not even 3-bar. 1-bar, 2-bar are totally unknown within the first round. If I sort by potential as well, I get the medium elite at the top, of course, but then, okay, I still get this guy, for example. Here's 1 gem, Schmalz, the medium elite goalie. But after that, there's only 1 guy outside of the top 8 that they tell me is a guaranteed medium elite. How about the low elites? Anything for my low elites? Nothing at all. Only 3-bar. No guaranteed low elites. Medium top 6s. There's the 1 guy at 37, but then that's it. The low top 6s, 1 guy was low top 6. So, will auto scouting give you something? Sure, absolutely. It's not unusable. I'd say it's pretty bad, but I wouldn't say it's unusable if you don't really care that much. You prefer to do trades or whatever else it might be. No problem. But I would say if you're trying to scout and build through the draft, you absolutely need to put some manual work into it, and this is the best way to do it. Yes, it's time consuming. Yes, it's a lot of button mashing, but it does reap quite a reward. And on top of all of this, the auto scouts will usually have scouting reports going into July, August, even next September. When these players are already drafted and playing preseason games, they're still on the auto scouts scouting report. Whereas, I'm going to go scout their player type in September. Buddy, they're not in Sault Ste. Marie anymore. They're now on an NHL squad. You cannot scout them any longer. So just another reason to not use auto scouts. It doesn't even know when the draft is. It has its reports go months after the draft. So even if you don't do that much, anything that you do is likely better than the auto scouts. So, back to the proper timeline when we did scouting manually. We can now enter the draft. I can go over some draft tips for you. There's not that much to say in terms of tips, but I'll walk you through the process and see what I can put down for you. So, let's say for the Canadians, we're picking at pick number 11. When it comes to the draft, you can always trade up or trade down with the selections, but you definitely want to target picks that other teams have in the trade blocks. Let's say, for example, the first overall pick here from St. Louis, it is not on their trade block. So, yes, I could acquire it, but it would take probably about 2 or 3 times as much trade value to acquire it than if they had it on their trade block and they were open to moving it. So how do I know they're open to moving it? Let me tell you. Let's see a team that wants to move their pick. No, so pick A. Pick 10 is the first one. In the top left corner, that little green target beside the number 10, that tells you that it is on the trade block and therefore will be much easier to acquire. Picks 1 to 9 are not on a trade block and will therefore be much harder to acquire. So if I did want to trade for a pick, let's say pick 10, I'd click on it and right away I'd see that it is in red. Perfect, and I can go ahead and make a trade with the Bruins. But if not, it would be a lot harder to do so. So when you have sim options, you can sim 1 pick by just simming one selection. You can sim 2 your next pick, which in my case would be pick 11. You can sim the entirety of that round, so it would bring me to the beginning of round 2, or you can just sim the entire draft. Let's say after you made your last pick in round 5, you just want to get it over with, call the whole thing, there you go. So if I sim to my pick at number 11, I can see who went, and with Fog of War turned off, I can see what their overall and their attributes are right away. For a medium class, this is pretty strong. 383 overall medium elite players out of the gate. That's interesting. Michael Misa, medium elite McQueen, Gavin, medium elite. This guy, Dimitrakos, 83 overall. Woo, Grabeshkov, 83 overall. Whoa. So you see, these are the generated players on top of the game players. So in the future, when there are no longer any real players, minus Misa, McQueen, and Gavin at 4, 5, and 6, this would actually be 4, this would be 5, and this Whiting guy would be 6. Martone, Misa, and all that Gavin, they wouldn't be here taking up spots. So really, usually it's the top 5 or 6 that are like, they could be the 80 overall medium elites. You won't usually get an 83 overall medium elite at 7 or at 8 in a normal draft. That is very rare because the real world players are just adding to the talent in the pool. Still bad drafting, but hey. So I've already used up some time on my clock here. You get 3 minutes for every selection that you make. That is your own user pick. You can call up to 5 timeouts per draft, and that adds 5 minutes each time. So if you don't want to get kicked out, you're trying to make a trade, you don't want to have the game auto draft for you, you can add a couple of those. It adds 5 minutes at a time. So 2 of those add 10 minutes, blah, blah, blah. So when you're at your selection, you can make your pick, you can sim through your pick, you can offer a trade, you can find a trade. So for example, if you want to see what might there be available, what are teams offering me for my pick, I can click on it, I can go L1, find trade on the open block. There are 4 offers, Ryan Strome in a 4th, Boone Jenner in a 3rd, JT Comfer a 3rd and a 4th, or Drew Doughty a 3rd and a 4th, wow, from the Kings. So if I want to do any of those, I can edit, accept, decline, blah, blah, blah. But that's if I want to find a trade. If I want to offer a trade, that's where I can go ahead and start building my own trade offer based on what the needs that I know that I have. I can also look at the draft class, I can look at draft activity, draft summary, draft board, what's already happened, what are my projected picks in this draft, what's my depth, what's my defensive depth, my goalie depth, what do I need, who did I watch list, draft summary, who's been drafted and by what team, in which round, by team, by round number, blah, blah, all that good stuff as well. Not stuff I use too often, but just good if maybe you missed a name, you want to go back and look at something, draft activity. What you use the most here is probably going to be view draft class, because before you make your pick, you want to look at what's available. Am I actually picking here? I don't know what. And you may have had players even watch listed. You can pin or unpin by hitting square on PlayStation. You can have guys pinned later in the draft. And then if you want to sort by pinned, you can have them come right to the top of your list. So that's another way to be keeping track of who's where. So if I look at Central Scouting ranking, I want to take Yerky Kallio, medium top 4D, 10th overall ranking, NHL ready, A shooting, all very interesting attributes. I want him. Great. I'll go to make pick and do that selection. When you have those strengths and weaknesses telling you, or those attributes, those letter rankings, what am I looking for? Yeah, the letter rankings telling you shooting, puck skill, senses, A+, and everything. Keep in mind that they're talking about their stats right now in relation to the rest of the draft class. So A+ shooting would not mean that this player has necessarily 95 plus accuracy and all that in the shooting. If I look at a sniper, for example, Henrik Edler. So B shooting doesn't mean B shooting is this player's ceiling and they'll never be more than a B shooter. It's saying in the draft class strength, it's B shooting. So A+ shooting might still mean like 3.5 star shooting, not necessarily 5 stars. It could mean 5 stars because A+ is the max. But if I want Kallio, for example, all these A's, A shooting, A puck skills, A senses, all that is fantastic. Great, I select the player. 81 overall, wow! So NHL ready usually means a range of about 76 overall and up. Could be 76, 77, could be 80, 81. This is a steal of a pick, wow. medium top 4D, 81 overall. Oh my goodness, and the X factors as well, superstar ability. That's a crazy pick. I know it's just a little tutorial video. That's a crazy pick. And then let's say my next pick at number 16. Let's say this time I'm between Malcolm Spence and Larry Nicholas. Malcolm Spence, B shooting, excuse me, D defense, okay. Meanwhile, Larry Nicholas, again, a generated player, much more upside to a generated player, A+ shooting. All right, let's go for it. What does that A+ shooting actually translate to? Let's see. And he's an 80 overall. That's crazy. This is a crazy draft. Larry Nicholas, A+ shooting meant 4-star shooting. Not necessarily 95, 98, whatever it might be. It could be again, but A+ is in relation to the draft class. Now let's move deeper into the draft. Let's say I sim a couple rounds here. Let's go to my pick in whatever, round 3 or 4. Pick 108, perfect. All right. Now, you might be tempted to take the guy with the high potential. Here we go, Schmalz. You might be tempted, for good reason, to take the guy with high potential. But keep in mind, if the player is 5 years away, we're just talking about NHL ready, meaning 76 overall and up, 1 year away can be low 70s, but 5 years away can be anywhere from like 47 overall, 48 overall to like early 50s. So Dave Schmalz being 5 years away means he may very well be 48 overall medium elite. And he's going to have the E's and okay, so C- actually not that bad. And there you go, he actually is a 48 overall player because of the 5 years away. The athletic was, what, C- because it was a 1.5 stars, so yeah, okay, not great. But, well, actually, the medium elite potential is great, but I'm saying the attributes today are not great, therefore, he will be a project. He will take you 5+ years to turn into an NHL player, and that's fine. I'd rather take that guy with the medium elite potential, then you can be trade bait, it's higher trade value, all that stuff is great. Oh yeah, just one more thing. When you want to draft a player, keep in mind their central scouting rank is essentially a guarantee of where they're going to go, plus or minus like 3 picks. So here we were at pick what? This was pick, actually let's send to our next pick at 144, all right? At 144, I'm gonna go ahead and make my selection here. Let's say I really want 2 guys. I really want Labre and I really want Galvis. I would only have to trade for 145 to get this done. I would be able to guaranteed get these 2 guys basically. At 139 and 144, these are gonna be their rankings, this is gonna be where they go. If I take Labre and I wanna get Galvis, I cannot wait one more pick. He will go with the next selection. There you go. And let's say I really wanted some other prospect who's going to be going in a few selections. Let's say I really want Derhuisseau, who's going to be going at 149. His ranking is 149, let's say. I'm at pick, what is this, 146? So 147, 148, 149. This is going to be where he's going, around the pick to Colorado, the pick to Florida. That's where he's going to go. I don't need to worry about him going to the Rangers. I don't need to worry about him going to the Blue Jackets. I don't need to worry about him going to the Sharks. But around here is where I gotta start worrying about where he might start going. The AI will never reach more than 2 or 3 picks to get the player that is ranked in that zone. So Derhuisseau, he went at 151. Makes perfect sense. So all that to say, the AI will never let a player drop more than 2 or 3 picks, and it will very, very, very rarely reach more than 2 or 3 picks. The most I've seen for a reach is like maybe 5 picks. But it won't be like MLB The Show where they're reaching like 30 plus to a different round. If you want a player, trade with a few picks earlier than where they're ranked to go, and you'll get them. If you want the guy at 158, trade for 155. That's the tip that I'm giving you right here. But I think that's about it for the draft. So I'll go ahead and exit, auto draft the rest, and we'll call it there for the draft. One thing that I forgot to touch upon in the draft was the gem bust indicator. On the right side of the screen, some prospects, usually half a dozen per draft class, will either be gems or busts. In my experience, this does not really mean anything. I've never drafted a bust, I'll tell you that, but the thing is, busts usually have lower potential. To my memory, I've never seen a low elite bust or a medium top 6 bust. These busts are usually like low top 6 Ds or low bottom 6 forwards, stuff like that. I'm already avoiding those players anyways. If you did happen to draft a bust, quote bust, with high potential, absolutely they could still develop. Don't be scared off by that. And the flip side of that is you might see a player with low elite or low top 4D potential, whatever, and they're classified as a gem. I've drafted many of these players that have turned out to be great NHL contributors, and I've drafted many of these players who ended up being duds. So just because it says that they're a gem, you can give them the proper development, put them in the lineup properly, give them their ice time, build them up and everything, and they're never going to get past being a 78 overall or an 80 overall. So if I had to put a title on it, the gem and bust indicator is more their value within the draft class. Like, oh wow, you can get this guy as a 4th round pick, but really he has 3rd round value. It's not necessarily a gem that's going to develop and be a star, nor is it a bust who's guaranteed never going to develop. If I had 2 players who were exactly the same potential, same age, same weight, same height, same attributes, everything, and one was regular medium elite and one was gem medium elite, then okay, I might give the slight 0.1% edge to the gem. But really, there's nothing special about drafting a gem or staying away from a bust. So the draft is now complete and you'll start advancing towards the off-season. So through the re-sign phase, the game will prompt you to re-sign any of your expiring scouts. I only have one this year, no problem. Go to assign scouts, you'll find that guy from Russia, and you'll go ahead and off, if you want to keep the scout that is, usually you want to, at least to give yourself the same base to begin with, and if there's better ones on July 1st, we'll hire better ones. We're about to do that next. But first, I would re-sign everyone who is already a part of your scouting staff. Now, for your scouts who are re-signing, you don't need to offer them the max amount. Usually I give them max minus 1 or 2 clicks. It doesn't really matter because the budget is turned off, but if you want to give them max, give them max. You want to feel better about your digital staff, your virtual underlings, why not? So go ahead and give them as much as you want, and that's all you got to do. It's just re-signing. You don't need to give them the max amount to get them to sign, but again, keep the years as the same, and they'll always sign if you give them max or max minus 1. Now you can sim to free agency if you're just worried about scouting. Of course, there's more to do with your players and whatnot. That'll be in the franchise mode guide coming another day. But for right now, you can move to July 1st, and the very first thing you want to do about your scouts is go and look at the hire staff screen, which is going to be under manage contracts. There you go. All right, you go to hire staff. All right, so right away I see a B- rated scout. Great. This B- scout is not good anywhere, really. B in the USA East. Would I rather have a C rated A plus or a B rated or a B- rated B? It's close. It's close. But for the sake of argument, let's say I'm hiring this guy for the USA East, Chuck Budens. Let's go ahead and give him the max offer because we're going to guarantee get him by doing so. And if I back out to my original staff, I'll want to make sure that I go out and fire my my current USA East scout, so that scout doesn't tell me, oh, I wanted to sign, but your staff was full. So Raphaël Bouchard, salut la visite, and we'll kick him out. And now once, let's say another 3 or 4 days pass, I'll get that next scout signed. If in year 3 or 4 or 5 you see that there are a bunch of A-rated scouts and stuff like that, which you should be seeing, you might have a little mini overhaul where you fire 6 and hire 6, and you kind of do what we did at the beginning of this video. Absolutely. By the end of year 5, 6, 7, 8, you should have almost all of your scouts being A-rated. In year 1 and year 2, it's going to be mostly B and C. But as long as you're always keeping an eye on who's available on July 1st, you'll always be getting the best ones available. So if you're simming to next season, Chuck, welcome aboard, blah, blah, blah. But one other thing you want to do while still the off-season, if I can go to contracts, view contracts, you also want to consider, because this is the guide to scouting and drafting, keep in mind the prospects who you just drafted. If I go to unsigned, the guys who just joined my organization, Calio, Nicholas, etc., what you need to keep in mind is for a player who you did not draft from one of the Canadian Junior Hockey Leagues, so not from the OHL, WHL, or QMJHL, you can sign that player and put him in the AHL right away. So if I want Calio to be in my top pair in Laval in the AHL with the Laval Rocket, I can do that by signing him. However, if I get a player who was from one of those Canadian Hockey Leagues, let's say Owen Protz from the Hamilton Bulldogs, if I sign Owen Protz, I would either have to play him in the NHL or send him back to junior. But because he's under the age of 20, he cannot play in the AHL. But the game will allow players who came from the USA Central, from the SHL, from Liga, etc., if they're 17, 18, 19, no matter what, they can be signed and play in the AHL, and to my knowledge, play without burning a year of their entry-level contract. I forget if that's only if they're 17, or if that's changed in recent NHLs. Now it's if they're 19, they can't do that. But guaranteed, if you sign one of your 17-year-old prospects from Liga and put him in the AHL, his 3-year entry-level contract will carry over and still be a 3-year entry-level contract come, let's say, next season, 2026 at this point in July. But it's a common question. You'll sign your prospect from one of those Canadian leagues, you'll want to play them in the AHL, and you'll say, hey, where did they go? They're either in the NHL or they're down back in juniors, but they cannot play in the AHL. Please remember that. Then we can get into prospect development. What's better? Should they be sent back to their team? Should they stay unsigned? Should I put them in the AHL? That's a topic for another day, but if I could just put it very quickly, I would say for the most part, you want to play a player according to what their role is. So if it says they're a minor league scorer and they're a 77 overall, yeah, give them first line minutes, give them as much chemistry as you can, go for it. But if they're still in the 60 overalls, really anywhere in the 60s, I would leave them unsigned. I wouldn't want to sign and bring a player to the AHL until they're at least going to be getting most likely top 6 minutes. Unless I really need to sign them because the alternative is letting them walk to free agency, I'm going to wait until they're about like 74, 75 overall and put them in the top 6 and try to maximize chemistry for them. So let's say this season is over. Now's the time where you go into your settings and you decide, okay, do I want to have another medium draft class? Do I go a high, low, 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 high, whatever it is? Now's the time to decide it, because once the calendar crosses over in September, it's going to be too late. But from now you can say sim to next season. I'll see you in September. And I'm now brought to September 13th. So now is when you can begin the original strategy that I said of round 1 going until October 1st, round 2 until November 10th, etc., etc. You'll no longer be starting like September 20th. From year 2 onward, you can get started with your scouting right away, starting on the date that the game lets the calendar turn over to the next season, which for me moving into year 2 would be September 13th. So again, I start going through my whole process. I go to assign scouts. I make sure everyone's in the right spot. It should be a lot faster because already my whole staff is already fixed. So I should only have to fix like the guys that got signed, or I could have done that over the off season. Boudin's, we said that he had been signed for the USA East, so I would send him to the USA East, and there you go. Everyone else is still in their proper region. I can get started right away going with round 1 of my scouting for the next season, which is playing style all the way up until October 1st. As you can see, that gives me quite a few prospects here. My goodness, I'm scouting 19 prospects until October 1st. So your year 2 results will be better than your year 1 results. Your year 3 results should be better than your year 2 results. As your scouts keep getting better and the region scores continue to improve, you will continue to uncover more prospects more quickly. And what's great is that when you go into the draft class of the next season, whoever wasn't drafted from last year still carries over. Whoa, look at this guy from Bosnia-Herzegovina, ranked 3rd. That's crazy. So if I sort by potential, already I see a bunch of these guys in the 500s, 400s, whatever, who are already uncovered. I don't need to waste my time now when I go back to scout and say, hey, when I go to Russia, I can fully skip over these guys because they are fully uncovered with their potential and their play style. So you can skip them and scout deeper into Russia because already at 115, 116, 230, you already know about these guys. So not only will this system of scouting help you season to season, after each year is accumulated, your scouts get better, their region efficiency gets better, and the number of prospects uncovered continues to carry over, which saves you time and allows you to scout more deeply. And I'll just finish off now by touching a little bit upon pro scouting. Like I said, if you have Fog of War turned off, then it doesn't really matter. Yes, you could say, okay, well, then what about line fit? I want to scout for that. Honestly, in recent years, since X factors have come into the mix, line score has mattered less and less for line chemistry. So yes, you want to get a player that ideally fits the line, but X factors kind of cancels all that out. So I'd rather have 20 amateur scouts than 16, and then I have 4 that are pro, and all they're doing is telling me how to boost the line score by a little bit. But then bringing in someone with an X factor like erases all the work that I just did. So anyways, let's say there is a player that I really want to trade for. I don't know, let's go to Toronto, a team that I would see often as a rival. Let's go see the Toronto Maple Leafs. Let's say I really want to trade for, I don't know, Nick Robertson, all right? I go to his page, his player profile, I scroll down. All right, it says that he does not fit any lines. Pro Scout Assessment does not fit any of my coach's lines, but that's 2 out of 4 bars uncovered. I might say, okay, I want to scout this player. Because I sent Chuck Boudin's to the NHL Atlantic, I'm able to do this. It could be a quick report or a complete report. I always do complete because quick, you end up doing 2 or 3 quicks to get complete. So I may as well just do a complete report, and you can confirm that right there on Nick Robertson. You could do it through that screen where I'm clicking on the player and then saying to scout them, or I could go to the scout screen, go back to the scout that I just saw, Chuck Boudin's. As you can see, Nick Robertson, that report will be done in like 4 days. That's great. I could say scout specific players, scout a group of players, or even scout team lines and strategies from a certain team. So if I wanted to scout Nick Robertson from this screen, I would say, okay, let's go Toronto Maple Leafs. And I would say confirm, and then I would choose the player from this screen instead. I want a complete report on Liljegren. It's probably a bit faster this way than going through the trade screen, but a couple ways to do the same thing essentially. If you wanted to then scout a group of players, this would take a little bit longer. You could say, okay, I want complete reports on all players on the Bruins, any position, and I'm going to go ahead and send them. You want to send them for, 1 week is not going to give you complete reports on everybody. You say, okay, let's say I give them 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, whatever it might be. I want everything on the Bruins uncovered. All their forwards, all their defense, what can I learn about them? So that's one way. Those are a couple ways to scout, whether you want to look at one player or one team, whatever it might be. But in the end, even if Nick Robertson did, in theory, fit my third line, or none of my lines, and I wanted to play him on the second line, I could still play him on the second line and then make sure he's playing with one of my X Factor players, and it cancels out everything. So another reason that, in my opinion, pro scouting doesn't really matter too much. I'd rather use those spots for my amateur scouts. But if you do want a pro scout, there's a little bit of how to do it. But ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the complete guide to everything scouting and drafting in NHL 25 franchise mode, or really NHL 19 to 25 franchise mode. Hopefully this is the last video to do it. I did NHL 23 saying, okay, it'll cover 23, maybe 24. It would have covered 25 as well, but I said, let's make one last video for NHL 25, and hopefully come NHL 26 or NHL 36, we'll get some new scouting involved. But I don't mind the system. Like I said, it takes a lot of work. It is very meticulous, but it does give you great results. I don't mind putting in work and getting a great reward. I wouldn't want to just click a button and get everything done for me. But there should be probably some sort of middle ground. But if I could summarize everything for you, if you are starting at the beginning of a season, not year number 1 that starts you a couple of weeks late, but if you're starting at the beginning of anything between year 2 and year 25, this is the way you want to do it. You want to have round 1, player style, until October 1st. Round 2, strengths and weaknesses until about November 10th. Round 3, skills assessment until about January 22nd. Round 4, potential and comparison to about late May, early June. That'll definitely depend on how many prospects you have in your region. Maybe you can move those scouts around that are done earlier, like in April. And then in round 5, your final refinement of potential and comparison for anyone who slipped through the cracks until June 23rd. Remember, your breakdown of scouts is as follows roughly. You should definitely be moving scouts around if you find that one region has more prospects than another and it's lacking, and you did the scouting, it only gets you to like rank 150, but another scout gets you to rank 400, maybe balance that out. You want to have about 3 OHL. Typically, I find the OHL has the most prospects. 2 QMJHL, 2 WHL, 2 USA Central, 2 Russia, 2 SHL, 2 Liga, and then 1 for the USA West, USA East, Extra Liga, NLA, and DEL. If you follow this general breakdown of scouts and closely follow the dates for the 5 rounds of scouting, you will have the top 200, 250, 300 plus prospects for every draft class fully uncovered. It's an incredible system, so thank you again to Red Boy for it. I hope that you'll be able to take advantage of it and that it will increase your enjoyment of franchise mode by building these dynasties, by finding these late gems. And if for whatever reason some question comes up, something that wasn't covered, or some situation you got yourself in that you're wondering a bit more, you want some clarification on, please do leave a comment down here on YouTube. I will get back to you within like 24, 48 hours max, or join us over on our Discord server, link in the description. That's a way to get to me a little bit more quickly, as well as having a few hundred other members who all know their franchise mode very well, who can help you out. So speaking of that, it's a community of almost 700 in the Discord server. We're over 8,000 here on the YouTube channel. We're doing franchise modes, guides, series, career simulations, breaking news and analysis in the real world of hockey in the NHL. It's a great time here on the channel, and if you enjoy this kind of stuff, this is your kind of thing, franchise mode and all that, this is the channel for you. Check out one of our dozen-plus franchise mode series, our over 25 career sims that have already been done. We'd love to have you join the team, and it'll be that much stronger with you as a part of it. So take a second, check it out. Leave a like if you enjoyed, because it's definitely a long process to make a video like this. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already to be made aware of all of our uploads and when we go live, and all of our NHL 25 and beyond content to come. Thanks again for watching. Looking forward to hearing any of your thoughts, questions, and whatnot on the video. Good luck in your scouting. Thanks again for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you once again in the next one.